So, you've probably heard of or have seen the moon of Elpis. I mean, it's kind of hard to miss. It's in the sky in a locked orbit above Pandora in every single game, and we can even walk along its surface during the pre-sequel. And as we know, Elpis has had quite the impact on the lore of Borderlands, especially when it comes to the vaults and the Iridians. But we all are familiar with that history. We all know of the vault it contained, and we all know what that led to, and we know how Elpis ended up fitting into the grand design of the Great Vault. But when it comes to Elpis itself, when it comes to the people it houses, when it comes to their cultures and the corporate history of the moon, the Iridians and the vaults had little to do with any of it. In fact, like Pandora before it, Elpis was colonized well before the discovery of any sort of Iridian influences for two distinct reasons by one distinct corporation. So today's question: why was and who colonized the geostationary moon of Pandora? So, on the surface, minus all the Iridian stuff, Elpis seems dull, barren, and full of monsters that will try to kill you much like the planet it orbits. There's really nothing to colonize, but what is ugly on the surface usually has riches deep within. This was the case for Pandora, and Elpis is no different. Below its hard, gray shell, Elpis holds large deposits of liquid methane, which is a key resource used throughout the Borderlands. For those who don't know, methane, the gas methane that is primarily used for creating heat, light, and synthesizing certain chemicals. And in Borderlands, it is also a necessary ingredient for fueling rockets, starships, and any other interplanetary vehicles, which in a universe like this one is pretty important, and as you can imagine, finding methane, liquid methane to be specific, in sizable portions would be very useful and very profitable for any who would take advantage of it. And that is exactly what Dahl did. Wishing to capitalize on Elpis' untapped resources, the Dahl Corporation was one of the first major conglomerates to settle the moon, establishing many outposts, mining zones, and ports, including Concordia. Now, for the sake of those who enjoy marking dates and timestamps, Dahl probably settled Elpis around the time they stuck their nose in the business of Pandora. And I say this because if you are going to establish yourself on a moon or on a planet, you're probably going to establish yourself on its planet or vice versa around the same time. Which in this case would make the most sense because when you look at how Dahl conducted business on Elpis, Dahl brought in convicted criminals to perform their hard labor and abandoned them to their fates when the company departed the sector, just as they did with Pandora, which led to the same outcome. On Pandora, those criminals went rogue and became bandits. On Elpis, those criminals went rogue and became scavs. But if you really needed another reason for why I say this is when the moon would be colonized, if Dahl is importing/exporting goods from Pandora, it would make the most sense to establish a jump-off point for ships heading to and from the area. Since the moon is stationary and does not move independently from Pandora, using Elpis to monitor, check, and resupply any operations conducted below would be smart. And this method is exactly what Hyperion did with Helios when they arrived in force after Borderlands 1.
Need I remind you that you are there to observe Pandora, nothing more. If you incur any damages to the Helios space station, I will personally...
Oh, sorry, sir, we're losing connection. Sorry.
Now, going back to Dahl and Elpis, Dahl's efforts to extract Elpis' methane went off without any sort of hitch, and made Elpis into a genuine market that was practically independent from Pandora. And it were these operations that brought people, culture, settlements, wealth, and other corporations like, for example, Atlas and eventually Hyperion. But it was also Dahl's mining operations that brought forth the moon's doom, the Krakening. According to Elpis natives, Dahl's efforts to mine and carve out each pocket of methane somehow cracked the moon.
Once upon a time, there was this moon. Then some military dudes came and started mining. They delved all deep and greedy and Crap. Moon cracked open, people died, no one lived happily ever after.
Now, the topic on what exactly Dahl did to successfully ruin Elpis is still debated to this day, and is a topic for another time, but the timeline for the event and the outcome are both clear. Judging by how the moon looks in Borderlands 1 compared to 2, it's clear the Krakening occurred just before the pre-sequel, and it was after Dahl broke Elpis and brought about the deaths of thousands that they did the only thing they were ever good at and got the hell out of there, abandoning the people of Elpis to their fates and making the moon a backwater usually skipped over in favor of arriving on Pandora. But like I said, the Krakening and the effects it had on Elpis is a topic for another time, and I just thought I would mention it here considering it's such an important event in the upbringing of Elpis as a colony. And I should mention, before we end today, if you are curious as to what happened to Elpis and its local population after the events of Borderlands 3, well, I have done my own investigation into the matter already, and you can go watch that video right here. If you have any questions or comments about this video, Borderlands, or its lore, you can leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll be sure to read each and every one of them. Thanks for watching.